I am an idiot. Now, before you think too much into that statement, let me set the scene. This is the Aus-NZ combined 24 hours of Le Mans, and it happened way earlier in the year than I'm actually posting this, so apologies for that. But at this point in the year, we were still doing the Intercontinental GT Challenge. Now, I'd been quite strong in those. I'd been doing pretty well in my Acura NSX, so I thought for Le Mans, I'd run in the GTE category and see how we get on. Now, I thought, well, who better to do this race with than with a longtime friend of mine online, me Wadey, who has done Formula 1 racing online and has been quite successful at it. So, we have a strong driver lineup in a car that I'm pretty good in at one of the best tracks in the world, and we'll go out there, we'll get a podium, maybe even win the thing, and have a really good time and not run into any setbacks whatsoever at all. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it turns out everything can go wrong. That's not necessarily due to either me or Wadey, it's just simply underestimating how difficult this race would be. So, as I said before, welcome to Le Mans, and right now we're in qualifying for the 24 hours of Le Mans, and this is of course the fastest lap in qualifying, because I'd be starting the first session of the race. Now, if you don't understand how Aus-NZ combined endurance racing works, we'll do a few different sessions across a time period, and so in this case, we'd be doing 6 hours of racing across just over 24 hours. And essentially how it works is there's 4 different sessions, and you'll race in each of those, and they use a system called time compression, where, for say, if you're 3 minutes behind the car in front, you'll only be 1 minute behind the car in front, and will, of course, go off the grid and then go at different times. I've explained this really badly, I've just realised, but it is essentially, it's endurance racing crossed with, well, and as I spin there, just coming off the Mulsanne straight, it's endurance racing crossed with NASCAR stage racing. That's the best way that I can put it, except, well, it's not like a caution. We're going at different times because it's staggered, it's an adjusted version of the gap. I'm going to stop trying to explain this because I realise I don't have a good way of explaining it. But whatever the case, we're at Le Mans and we're driving a Corvette. And this is the number 64 Corvette. It's the factory Corvette that they race in real life. That's the number they use. There is another Corvette in the GTE class, and that car is being driven by Speed Racer, is actually my teammate in the Intercontinental GT Challenge, and he's driving the number 4. So that's actually the IMSA number that they use, and there's 6 cars in GTE, and the rest of the field, they're all racing in LMP1 with the LMP1 hybrids from a few years ago, with the TS050, the Audi R18, well, that iteration of the Audi R18, and the Porsche 919, yes, 919. And, well, here we are, we're coming through the last of the S-Bends here at Le Mans. I believe, yes, these are the Porsche curbs, or the Porsche curbs further back. I've never been good with the corner names, really. Apart from the Top Gear test track, I know my way around that relatively well. And here we are coming into the final section of track, coming towards the Ford chicanes, I believe these are. And we're just coming down through the gears, and as you can see, I mean, we probably didn't do enough setup work. Well, I didn't do enough setup work with this car, because as you can see, it's not driving particularly well, and it's not the greatest GTE car at Le Mans. And we crossed the line with a 4-minute 0.7 lap time, which actually ends up putting us, well, last overall, but Dado Racer, who was in front of us, got a grid place penalty, which is pretty good. So Uncrud Squid, he took out the pole position in LMP1, followed by Fish Racing, Taipan Samurai, Freight Train Emu, and then we're moving on to GTE. So Speed Racer in the sister Corvette, he took out the pole for GTE, then it was Colonel Lloyd in the Aston Martin, Highlander in the first of the 4 GTs, then it was Woody Lizard, myself in the second of the Corvettes, and Dado, because of that grid place penalty, would be starting at the back of the grid in the last of the 4 GTs. So, should we get this race underway? I think we should. So here we are then, lining up for a rolling start here at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The lights will be coming on in a moment's time, but we can only go racing when we hit the start-finish line. So the track goes green, and we are on the inside of Woody Lizard, getting ready for the start. And we're just about to round the final corners, and we'll start racing for 6 hours, over 24 hours. And it looks like we have gone green for the 24 Hours of Le Mans for 2019. And Woody Lizard and I, we've already fallen slightly behind the leading pack, but we'll gain on them in the first couple of corners. Now, I believe fast forward later on in the lap, coming into first of the chicanes on the Mulsanne, and lots of us are going off. Woody Lizard goes straight on. I go off the track as well, so does Colonel Lloyd, and we might even pick up a position from this. So Colonel Lloyd in the Aston Martin, we drag alongside him. Let's see if we can go up into 8th position overall, and this will actually be for 3rd in GTE, but it looks like Dado Racer is looking to get involved in this. In the Ford GT behind us, the classic racing car, it's the number 9, but it looks like Colonel Lloyd is just going to be able to out-drag us, and that means we're exposed to Dado Racer. Will Dado try it around the outside? It looks like he might, and it looks like we'll have a look at the inside of Colonel Lloyd, but we won't get the move done. Dado looks outside, there's a little bit of contact, he goes off the track, but we're all still clean on the first lap. No cars in the wall as of yet. Now, fast forward later into the race. 55 minutes to go in the first of the 1 hour sessions here at Le Mans, and Dado Racer, he's having a look in the Ford GT going down the start-finish straight, and look at the straight line speed on that thing. It doesn't look like this Corvette's very good with straight line speed. I don't know about Speed Racer, but this thing has not been the greatest, as Dado Racer just breezes by us down the start-finish straight, and it looks like you hold the position into turn 1, and there's a little bit of contact again. However, we're all still through, and there was a little bit of a gap. We try to go for it, but Dado Racer will hold the position in his Ford GT, and we'll be chasing him down towards the Mulsanne straight, and we'll see if we can get a run on him. Now, coming down the straight just later in the lap, we're utilising the slipstream, and we'll see if there's a gap on the outside. It looks like there will be a gap on the outside, and we're going to go for it. We'll have the inside line for the next corner, and we go around the outside of Dado Racer. There's a little bit of contact, but we've gotten the move done. It's up into 4th place in GTE. And we're just notching down the fuel load slightly less because it's a long session. But look at this. Dado's coming back at us later in the race with 49 minutes to go, and he's breezed by us. The slipstream, very, very effective, and it's especially good in the Ford GT. Meanwhile, it looks like Colonel Lloyd has had some issues. He's going slow in the Aston Martin as Dado Racer goes off the track. And, well, we almost lost it as well, but we've kept it on the road. And it looks like there'll be a battle between us guys, and meanwhile, I lose control going through Indianapolis, and then the Connect decides to remind me that it still exists, and we've gone into the back of Dado Racer. Dado Racer's off the track, and we've hit him backwards first, and the rear wing is completely gone. The backside of the car is destroyed, and we're going to have to come straight to pit road. This is a disastrous start to the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and it's a lengthy pit stop way too early on in the session, and we are quite far behind everybody, and then we start making little mistakes like this, and, well, it's not helping our case whatsoever, so that is quite a big setback. Meanwhile, it looks like the damage has gotten a little bit too much for Dado Racer as well, as he's come into the pits from P5 in GTE, and we'll take that position away from him. That's so unfortunate. I could have saved that slide if it hadn't been for the Connect, and Dado and I, we've just been sort of passengers in that whole incident. But here we are at the end of the first session. We've come home 5th, and we'll be handing over to me, Wadey, in just a moment's time to do the first of the 2 hour sessions. So, Uncrewed Squid is leading the way in LMP1 in the number 6 Toyota, followed by Fish Racing in the number 8 Audi, Taipan Samurai, Freight Trainer, and Emu rounds off LMP1. Highlander was the main talking point in the number 67 Ford, as with what happened with him is he got across the line before the leading LMP1 cars got to it. So what happened with him was he managed to put a lap on the entire field because the rest of the GTE field finished when the LMP1 cars did, while he went round another lap and put 3 minutes on the rest of the field. But luckily, with time compression, that gap was only 1 minute, so it made it a little bit better for us. Woody Lizard did well to get the 91 Porsche into second, and Speed Racer was very fast in the number 4 Corvette. Meanwhile, we're in second to last place with Dado Racer behind us, but it's only the first session, and now we'll be handing over to me, Wadey, XO48, who's a long-time friend of mine, and he does very, very well in the Formula 1 championships you see, such as SRL. So let's see how he does in a sports car. It was actually going pretty well for me, Wadey, in the early part of the session, but unfortunately, he was involved in the crash that you're about to see here on board with Lockie. So, Lockie actually got a run on me, Wadey, and it doesn't look like he knew he was there, and they both end up in the wall, which this crash ended up being very, very costly for both of the drivers. And unfortunately, it got even worse for me, Wadey, as a migraine set in, and he was unable to do the rest of the race. And, well, that meant extra driving duties for me. But it's only his first race. I think I threw him in at the deep end there a bit. But if we see him again, expect him to be a lot quicker than he was. But regardless of the fact that he's a rookie, we were still quite far down for the start of Session 3. So, Wadey had knocked down the first of the 2-hour sessions, and now it was my turn. So here we are, we were waiting on the grid, ready for our time to go, and, well, we did have some catching up to do, but unfortunately it was a pretty uneventful session for us, and when it was eventful, it wasn't necessarily eventful in a good way, because I kept making mistakes like these that put us even further behind. Now, being a 2-hour session, we did actually have to make a pit stop, so here I am, coming into the pits, pretty marginal on fuel, and well, we do a pit stop, but they don't change the tyres for some reason. I don't know why that happened, and that's pretty much just making our day worse. And here we are, we're going a lap down on Speed Racer, who I believe is leading the race at this point in the sister Corvette, and well, we're now a lap down, and well, and here's a hairy moment we had with one of the LMP1 cars going into the back of us. That could have ended in tears for more than one person. And here we go. Who would have thought the car that we crashed into at the start of the race is now putting us a lap down? So, Cosmic Robbie is now at the wheel of the number 9 Classic Racing Ford. And here's another defining moment. Putting it in the barrier, and then we had to come in for another pit stop, I'm fairly certain. Which, well, yes, we did, and it actually put us even further behind, so we were falling even more out of contention. But here was one of the major talking points of the session. Here's Woody Lizard, who's just put us a lap down in the number 91 Porsche. Again, who would have thought that car would have been putting us a lap down after what happened. And he actually brakes earlier than expected, coming off the Mulsanne straight, and we've had to come from hundreds of meters back and go down the inside, otherwise there would have been a massive accident. And that was one of the most impressive maneuvers I've done in my sim racing career. It's a shame it wasn't for an actual position. But here we go, Woody Lizard, he's just taking the track position back, and he's just lapping us once again. So I think we've been lapped by just about everybody now. Woody Lizard's actually 5th out of 6 in GTE. And then again, he's getting away from us on the straight, so I don't think this car's the greatest in a straight line. And that was the end of the final 2-hour session, with only a 1-hour session left. So, as soon as we cross the line, we'll see the results for this in a moment's time. Now, it was Uncrewed Squid who was leading the way after taking over from Shads, I believe it was, in LMP1, and Speed Racer and the sister Corvette was leading in GTE, but again, we were just miles off everybody, and we were so far down in 6th. So we would certainly have a lot to do in the final 1-hour session if we had any hope of getting a good result. So here we are, setting off on our way. An hour left in the race to go. Let's see if we can recover anything. Now, while we'd been pretty off the pace all weekend, here we are coming round the final couple of corners and onto the start-finish straight to dip just into the 359s, and that was probably the only 359 that we set all weekend between both me, Wadey, and I. And look, annoyingly, 1 minute left in the 1-hour session and 1 minute left in the race, and we had to come in for a fuel stop. That just adds insult to injury, but we didn't really see any other cars in the final 1-hour session. But regardless, here we are, rounding the final few corners to finish, by some miracle, our very first Aus-NZ combined 24 hours of Le Mans. And just like that, 1,000 kilometers, 6 hours of racing, held over 24 hours, is over. And here are the final results. So Uncrewed Squid and Shads took the victory in LMP1, followed by Dark Racing, Forsey and Fish Racing. Then it was Sado and Taipan. Freight Trainer did the entire race by himself. And Night Pegasus, Emu and Triple Rotor Racing finished 5th in LMP1. Freight Trainer wasn't the only man to do the entire race by himself, as Speed Racer drove the number 4 Corvette to victory all by himself in GTE. And so did Colonel Lloyd, actually, in the number 37 Aston Martin. He drove the entire race by himself to 2nd. I didn't realise there were that many people doing the race by themselves. Then it was Dado Racer and Cosmic Robbie in the number 9 Classic Racing Ford, followed by Lockie and Woody Lizard in the number 91 Porsche. The 67 Ford of Highlander and Simo Racing that somehow got 3 minutes ahead after the end of Session 1 finished 5th. And there was me, Wadey, and myself in last position in GTE and last position overall. Regardless of our gross underestimation of how difficult this race was going to be, I'm still proud that I managed to finish this, and I was so, well, it was an honour driving alongside me, Wadey. We hadn't actually raced in a long time, and it was great to get back together, even if we did finish last. Now, yes, it was an idiot's move to underestimate how difficult this race was going to be, and, well, it was stupid to underestimate how difficult it was, but it was a pretty cool experience, I'd have to say. Now, before I wrap this up today, first of all, congratulations to Shads in winning an LMP1 and actually achieving the Aus-NZ Triple Crown of the Bathurst 1000, Indianapolis 500, and Le Mans 24 Hours. I also want to say that, well, before we did this whole thing, somebody in my Discord server, who you'll know as soon as I tell you what he said to me before this race, so if you're on the Discord server, you'll know who this is. He said to me before we did this race, winners drive Fords. Now, that's not necessarily true, because this race was won by a Corvette. But proven by us two, losers also drive Corvettes. And on that note, it's time to end. Thank you very much for tuning into this year's edition of the Aus-NZ Combined 24 Hours of Le Mans, and I can assure you, I'll be back next year stronger and wiser than I was this year. So like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.